Jonathan, tell us a little bit about Select Ireland.
Well, Select came from, there's a grouping of about 75 schools around Ireland we're all part of Marketing English in Ireland, and Select was a group kind of like-minded individual schools that wanted to try and refine, the product offering that we were giving. We felt that because there's such a diverse group of schools within MEI, Marketing English in Ireland, it's hard sometimes for an agent, that the salespeople, when they come over to you can be going to Donegal or down to Sligo or down to West Cork, but in some instances they don't want to do that. They want to hit Dublin, they want to hit the big cities, see the main, some of the main providers, because they would be generally the most popular of destinations.
Yeah.
Given the fact that we've got the airport, so short-term visitor coming in. And there had been discussions between some of the school owners who, I mean, to be quite honest, a lot of us would be good friends anyway, because we've been in the business for 20 plus years together. And eventually we came up with Select Ireland. So we had grand plans of extravagant launches and all this kind of stuff that was supposed to happen in the National Art Gallery and things like this. And we were having our first fam trip, was going to come into Ireland. And sadly, everything got shelved. But it's actually been a wonderful forum for all the 9 schools, because once the pandemic hit, we were able to discuss with each other what was going on.
Yeah.
And how we could go online and what we could do for students. And if a school was going to reopen, how were they going to reopen? So the information was shared as well.
And in a normal year, and obviously this isn't a normal year, but in a normal year, if we ever have one of those again, how many students come to Ireland to learn English?
The last few years, it's been touching about 115, 120,000.
So that's quite sizable.
Yes, and that's not. There's every industry has its own language. So we have your individual client, which is your student, and then the student weeks, which is it would be the bed nights, for example, in a hotel or a B&B. So we've 120,000 on average students. So I think we would normally have about 28,000 students coming to Ireland between September and December. And I think that figure is down to less than I think it's 2,000 or less.
Yeah.
It's a pretty atrocious drop. And effectively the peak season where we would see June, July and August, as I mentioned earlier, being extremely busy for us, gone completely.
Completely gone. Yeah.
And the breakdown would be, which again sometimes surprises people, is we would have about 65,000 students under 18, and then the rest would be over 18.
Yeah.
And a large percentage of the over 18s then would be, your university student. But we would also be very strong on late adults. A new program that's become very popular, for example, is a 30 plus program.
Yeah.
But we would also have teacher training programs that we would run that were all cancelled. And the problem there is, it's a bit like, you're bringing a teacher over to show them the best of what we can do, so that they can bring it back to their country. And because obviously we'd have kind of the best methodology, the blended learning courses, things like that. But all of those teachers then subsequently come back, or a lot of them would subsequently come back with school groups. So all of those opportunities were missed.
Yeah. And what markets do you take from? I mean, obviously the markets wouldn't necessarily be the UK and the US, so it must be a lot of Europe. And even a bit of South America.
Yes, in Ireland Inc. It's a bit scary when you say it to people and they don't believe you, that 111 countries in 2019. 111 different countries came to Ireland to study English. So as well as your traditional Western European markets, Ireland is doing extremely well, for example, in Turkey. We're very strong and always have been in Japan, Korea, Taiwan. But it's intriguing. We got a great contract from Panama. We're getting students in from Costa Rica, Honduras, Chile, right across the globe. So, and the Irish schools with MEI would have always been the trailblazers in that, and we had to learn how to market well, because again we were faced with say one of our biggest competitors, the UK, and the UK obviously have a fantastic network through the British Council, where they have representation in so many countries around the world. So it was up to MEI and the team there for us, to give us kind of the means to go out, and it's incredible. Ireland has become one of the shining jewels in the crown, so much so that in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years, Irish schools have taken top school in Europe on a number of occasions.
It's fantastic. And you mentioned the UK there. So is there an opportunity with the UK leaving the EU for Ireland to actually steal some of their market?
Definitely, because number one, the passport issue is going to be huge, because when you consider that a huge number of Italians don't have passports, for example, so they would travel with the identity cards. And that's an accepted mode of entry into Ireland, and the UK will not be accepting that, it looks like. Also, lots of the European contracts, obviously, that would exist. So for a number of years, there would be, say, French government contracts, Italian government contracts that are European funded based, and the UK won't be able to access them anymore. Yeah. So it's a huge opportunity for Ireland to take advantage of that.
Yeah. I suppose the key thing, though, at the moment is when we don't have international flights into the country, we all have a problem. The whole tourism and hospitality sector is a problem, but just as much you mentioned 100 odd countries that you are getting students and business from, but if they can't access Ireland, we've got a major problem, don't we?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the knock-on effect as well that we know what should be done. Everybody's watching the news. We understand, obviously, and this is the bit that, it's very important that we understand the terrible position that we're in and what the government has to do. But there are means that they could be taking, the rapid testing, stuff like that would give people a wee bit of security. But, if people can't get on a plane or won't get on a plane, it's game over, because all of our business, there is no domestic, business really. It's all coming from outside, and we're very lucky because the likes of Ryanair and Aer Lingus have expanded their route network so much that it's been beneficial to us that we've opened up some of these new markets.
Absolutely. And of course, there's a multiplier effect because, your business, I suppose, is the language schools and stuff, but equally you put on programs of activity, you have transfers, your customers visit tourist attractions. Tell us a little bit about, if you like, that larger impact on Ireland that you guys bring.
Well, it's terrible. I had a series of, one day I sat down here and I started calling the Glendalough Visitor Centre, Kilkenny Castle, the girls up in Titanic in Belfast. Yeah. Like all of these guys, we would send them groups either in the 49-seaters or the 53-seaters, and we would use bus companies. Yeah. So every student that lands into the country would either have a private transfer organised, or they'd use the Dublin taxis, obviously, from the airport, or we would organise a transfer from a member of staff, or else if it's a group, we would have a bus waiting to collect them. And then the bus would bring them to a central location where they'll meet their host families. And then on the Saturday morning or the Sunday morning, that same group or those same students we'd be going on a tour anywhere across the country. Yeah. And that's all gone.
Absolutely, yeah. Your sector, it sort of straddles education and tourism to a certain extent, doesn't it? So it's nearly like an amalgam of the two. Have you found it difficult to sort of find a home, or where do you see your home, or do you straddle both quite comfortably?
We straddle both, which is sometimes problematic. We're very lucky, particularly from the Select side, in that we Enterprise Ireland have a thing called Education in Ireland, and they're very good at promoting, but it's generally the higher education sector, which is fine. But in the past, years back, we would have been looked after by Fáilte Ireland, Tourism Ireland, and we've now kind of fallen between the two stools.
Yeah. Just going back to COVID and when COVID hit, obviously your planned summer program and activities and stuff had to be abruptly ended. Were you able to supply any of the services in a virtual or a digital format?
Yes.
Was there any way you could sort of recoup some of the earnings that way?
We did. If you looked at any of the or a lot of the English language schools websites, we developed, and this was the crazy thing, that we developed between March and May full virtual, both adult and junior online programs. So we were offering 10, 15, 20 hours a week for adult programs, and then we were offering a junior product where the kids would have had English language tuition in the morning, and then they would have had a virtual social program in the afternoon. But again, what we found was unfortunately, was that by the time it came to us, the target market had 3, 4, 5 months already online, and the desire wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, the revenue from it was nowhere near what it would be in terms of face-to-face.
Jonathan, when you reopened in the summer, you obviously had to implement quite a few sort of return to work protocols to counter COVID. Mm-hmm. What do they entail?
Yeah, it started a long time before we reopened, I'll tell you. So, for example, anybody that came through the door, prior to coming through the door, would have received about 3 or 4 different documents that they had to read and then sign, assuring us that they had gone through all the protocols, that they were exhibiting none of the symptoms of COVID. Our structure changed completely in terms of, normally we would have 14 students in a classroom, which again, most of the select schools would be similar. We were down to about between 6 and 8. All of the schools would have had sanitizing stations put in throughout the buildings. Every student in our own business in CES, all students have to wear a face mask. All teachers have been provided with visors. Every building has a self-isolation room, so that if a student does feel some of the symptoms, they're taken straight out of class, and then they'll get the test, and then we'll take it from there. But there was documents prepared through Select in consultation with the ELE, the Department of Education Working Group, and they started kind of asking us, or telling us, this is what we want, and then we said, well, some of it is or is not feasible. So then we came up with the documents, which were adopted by MEI, and it was an agreement with MEI and Select and another group. So
all the issues that schools and universities are wrestling with at the moment, or very recently, you guys actually were taking that head on in the summer.
Yes, yeah, and it was done and dusted by in our case by the 10th of August. I know in Select about 4 of the 9 opened up on the 10th, and extremely successfully, because again, which was interesting, we had students who were taking online classes, which we moved to immediately. So the Department of Education would have asked that all students be provided with online classes, and that was about towards the end of May, June. But we had actually gotten them online classes the week after we were shut down.
Yeah.
So we had moved much quicker than was anticipated. But then, of course, you're getting complaints from students going, well, we didn't pay for online classes. We wanted, and it was fantastic that the students were very happy to come back to face-to-face classes. And only last week, for example, I did an interview with one of our South American girls in Spanish, and she was saying to me that she's an au pair. So she was brought over as an au pair to work in a family, and obviously they were very worried, and she was very worried about coming back to school because of how was it going to be done? Was everything going to be cleaned? But there's a huge additional cost, but I mean, it's what you have to do. So myself and our office manager at for example, at 11:30 after break, we go out with our antiviral sanitizing spray, and we're going up and down all the stairs, the corridors, every surface is being sprayed. But the girl basically said to me that once she saw how we were operating, once she saw that everybody was wearing a mask, the teachers would all be wearing visors, there was constant cleaning going on, you know, and as I said earlier, hand sanitizing stations literally everywhere.
Yeah.
And also we've got the HSC posters and stuff like that right throughout the school. So really there is no excuse, you know, and it's been phenomenal, because if people feel comfortable, which they have done, and it's been positive because of the fact that what we've done is we've taken advantage of that and kind of posted some videos, because what our agents were asking us abroad was, well, what does the new norm look like?
Yeah.
So we then made some short videos of showing some of the classrooms that there are only, where there would normally be, as I said, 12 or 14 students, there's now 6 or 8.
Yeah.
All the teachers would have a visor, as I said. So people want to see that, so then they can give confidence. So the sales process is kicking in that you want to get people back traveling, and once they see that it's safe to do so, and if we can convince the airline, well, I know the airlines don't need convincing, it's other people that we need to talk to get them, you know, and once the green light is given, I do think that people will travel, because there isn't a desire. People want the face-to-face.
Yeah.
You know, virtual is fantastic in many instances, but what people want to be doing is sitting in the classroom with an extremely good teacher that we have right across Ireland. We've got some of the best teachers in the world who are all university graduates, unlike other countries.
Yeah.
You know, because the parameters that are required to get in the good old days with ACELs and QQI meant that, as I said, you know, we've got fantastic university graduate teachers who are giving a phenomenal product. It's just once we can get back to being able to, you know, the pub nights and the international food nights that we would do, and the trips out to Howth, all of that has kind of been shelved. But as soon as we can get back to it and it can be done safely, we will be doing it.
Great. Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure, Owen.